What if the person you love slowly started becoming a part of you in the most horrifying way? Together 2025 is a supernatural body horror thriller directed by Michael Shanks where love collides with fear as two lovers are fused by a dark and unexplainable force. With an IMDb rating of 6.9 stars out of 10, it's love and horror stitched into one body. Before we dive into the creepy details, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more spine-tingling recaps. All right, turn down the lights. It's time to meet together. The film begins with a search party looking for a missing couple, Carrie and Simon. Two of the search dogs wander into an underground cave and drink from a small fountain. When they come back up, their owner notices them staring at each other without moving. That night, while in their cages, one of the dogs makes a strange crackling sound. The owner goes to check and is shocked to see that the two dogs have been horribly joined together into one body. In another city nearby, a couple, Tim Brassington and Millie Wilson, are having a party with friends before they move to the countryside. Millie is a teacher, and Tim is a musician who has given up on his big dreams. During the party, Millie suddenly proposes to Tim using an invisible ring. Tim thinks she's joking and takes too long to answer, making things awkward in front of everyone. Eventually, Tim says yes to her proposal. At night, Tim apologizes to Millie for embarrassing her in front of everyone, saying he didn't mean to. But Millie says maybe they should break up to make things easier for both of them. Tim convinces her that they are still in love. Before falling asleep, Tim thinks he hears Millie whisper to him,
"Can you ask them to leave? Oh. I can't sleep with them staring at us."
Tim looks across the bed and sees a creepy smiling woman sitting next to a dead man. As he pulls the covers over himself, the woman crawls toward him. Tim then wakes up from the nightmare. Later, they start unpacking in their new house when Tim notices a bad smell. He checks the ceiling and finds a bunch of dead rats stuck together, but one rat is still alive, scaring him. He drops it and quickly throws it away. In the next scene, Millie starts her new job at the school. She becomes friends with another teacher, Jamie McCabe, who also lives in the same neighborhood as her and Tim. Jamie asks if she has explored the woods and offers to show her and Tim around the town. The next morning, the couple goes hiking in the woods. They think they're lost, but Tim notices bells hanging along the path and thinks they mark the way out. They follow the bells, but after walking deep into the woods in the rain, both Tim and Millie fall into an underground cave. They find there's no phone signal and notice the same kind of bell hanging inside the cave. Because of the storm, they can't get out, so they make a fire and also drink the cave water, just like the dogs did earlier. While they rest, Millie asks Tim how he was able to smell the dead rats in the house. Tim explains that when he was a kid, his father once told him to clean his room because there was a bad smell. Tim couldn't smell anything until his dad tore the room apart and found a dead rat that Tim never noticed. Later, Tim's father died and his mother suffered a mental breakdown. She stayed in bed with her husband's body for days, smiling through tears while it decayed beside her. The experience left Tim with deep emotional scars that still affect him as an adult. After that, they both fall asleep in the cave. In the middle of the night, Tim wakes up and feels like the cave is breathing with him as if it's alive. This makes him anxious and scared, but it was just a nightmare. In the morning, Tim and Millie wake up to find their legs stuck together with some strange substance. When they pull themselves apart, it's painful and rips some of their skin. They manage to climb out of the cave and make their way back home. At home, Millie asked Tim to massage her shoulder. While doing it, he started feeling attracted to her. He got distracted and didn't realize he was squeezing too hard. Tim quickly apologized. Later, Tim goes to shower while Millie drives off to town to get some groceries. He suddenly loses consciousness of himself, and his body starts moving in sync with Millie's car, causing him to get hurt. In the next scene, Tim visits the doctor. The doctor thinks Tim might have had an anxiety attack and prescribes a muscle relaxant medicine. He also tells Tim that he and Millie are lucky, unlike Carrie and Simon, the couple who went missing in the woods. When Tim gets home, he searches online for information about the missing couple. Suddenly, Millie's coworker, Jamie, shows up at their home to welcome them to the neighborhood. During dinner, Tim and Millie tell Jamie about their scary experience in the cave, including the giant bell. Jamie explains that the cave used to be a chapel for a New Age church, but it mysteriously collapsed years ago after bad weather. Then, Jamie compliments the food, and Millie says Tim cooked it. She jokingly tells Jamie that Tim doesn't even have a driver's license. Tim replies that it's a good deal. She gets a personal cook and he was trapped with her. The comment leaves everyone feeling uncomfortable. After Jamie leaves, Tim pulls Millie close and they start kissing, but their lips got stuck together and Millie thought Tim had bitten her. Tim tried to explain the strange feelings he'd been having after moving to the town, but Millie brushed it off. Later that night, while they were sleeping, Millie felt her hair being pulled. She turned on the light and saw Tim choking on it. Terrified, she tried to pull her hair out of his mouth. After some struggle, he finally managed to get it out, and they stared at each other in fear. The next morning, Tim got ready to go to the city to play with his band. Millie says that Tim needed to rest after what happened the night before, but Tim refused to cancel. Millie drove him to the train station. Before he left, she told him to take his time and even suggested he stay with his friends for the night, hoping it might help him. As she drove away, Tim began having the same strange episodes as before. The farther Millie went, the worse his hallucinations became. Because of this, he missed his train. Tim couldn't bear being too far from her, so he walked to the school where she teaches. Millie rushed out to meet him and quickly took him to a boy's bathroom. Inside, Tim couldn't control himself and became passionate with her. After that, their bodies somehow got stuck together and they struggled to pull apart. Then they noticed a boy outside the stall. He ran off to call Jamie. In a panic, they managed to separate just in time. The kid brings Jamie to the bathroom while Tim hides in the stall. Millie came out and Jamie asked what she was doing in the student bathroom. Millie made up an excuse and Jamie sent the kid back to class, advising her to use the staff bathroom instead. Before leaving, Jamie noticed Tim was in the bathroom with Millie. A little later, Millie and Tim got home and she angrily yelled at him for getting her into such a mess. They got into a heated argument and Millie walked out, going straight to Jamie's place to apologize for what happened earlier. Jamie tells Millie to calm down, but when he sees her crying, he invites her inside. Inside, Millie notices a photo of two boys who look like a mix of Jamie. Jamie then asks her what happened. Millie says she and Tim had a big fight, and she's thinking about breaking up with him. Jamie tells her about Plato's story, how the ancient Greeks believed humans were once made with 4 arms, 4 legs, 1 head, and 2 faces. But Zeus feared their power, so he split them in half, forcing people to spend their lives searching for their other half, their soulmate. Jamie tells Millie that if she's found her soulmate, she shouldn't let him go. He admits that he once let his soulmate go, and it's his biggest regret. Just then, Millie sees Tim standing outside, so she quickly leaves. At night, Tim sees that Millie is already asleep. Then he researches about the missing couple and learns that Carrie and Simon also went down the same path to the cave as he and Millie did. Suddenly, Tim sees Millie standing outside his room. She seems to move the same way he does, then slowly lifts into the air and trying to drift toward him. Tim quickly opens the door and slaps her awake. Later, Tim tries to explain to Millie about the missing couple and says something has been happening to them too since they came back from the cave. But Millie doesn't believe him and tells him to sleep in another room. As Millie is leaving, she suddenly stops. Tim tells her he knows why, because he wanted her to stop. He says something from the cave has left a mark on them. Tim then tells her he's going back to the cave in the morning to find answers. But Millie says her parents are coming for lunch on Sunday and tells him he shouldn't be here. She adds that she doesn't want him anymore, then goes to bed. In the next scene, Tim and Millie sleep in separate rooms. Tim wakes up and feels his body being pulled toward Millie's room. He tries hard to stop himself, but then Millie is also pulled toward him. They end up getting stuck together, starting to fuse at the arm. Tim quickly tells Millie to grab his muscle relaxant medicine, diazepam. They both take the pills from the whole bottle, which makes them pass out. In the morning, Tim wakes up and sees that his and Millie's arms are fused together. The fusion isn't working fully because the drug is still in their system, but once the pills wear off, they will start to fuse again. So before that happens, Millie gives Tim some whiskey to numb the pain and then uses a buzzsaw to cut the skin between their arms. After they separate and calm down, Millie decides to drive them to the hospital. But then she realizes she left her car keys at Jamie's house the other day. Millie goes to get the keys, while Tim stays behind to avoid more trouble. However, he later decides to go back to the cave. He finds other people fused into the walls, including Carrie and Simon, who have turned into a horrible creature. He grabs a knife and cuts off their fingers so he can escape. Millie goes to Jamie's house but doesn't find him at first. She notices a wedding video playing, showing 2 men looking very much like Jamie. In the video, the men take part in a ritual where they fuse together. Jamie then appears and reveals the truth. He is the fusion of those 2 men, part of the cult he once mentioned. The cult believes people must become whole by fusing, either willingly or else they'll end up being forced into it and turning into something monstrous form. Jamie tells Millie that he wants her and Tim to join willingly. When she refuses, he slashes her wrist. Millie fights back, striking him in the face, and runs home. In the next scene, Millie runs back home, where Tim has returned. As they are pulled closer together, Tim recalls Millie's earlier proposal and expresses how deeply he loves her. He is ready to cut his own throat so they won't have to face the forced fusion. Millie shows her wrist wound and accepts her death in Tim's arms. But Tim refuses to lose her. In desperation, he fuses his arm with hers to stop the bleeding. Millie realizes this fate is unavoidable and accepts it. The two confess their love again and share a final dance to Millie's favorite song as their bodies slowly fuse together into one. In the next scene, Millie's parents come to the house for Sunday lunch. When the door opens, they see a single, ordinary-looking person who looks like a mix of Tim and Millie. The movie ends. And that wraps up Together, 2025, a haunting story of love, obsession, and the terrifying price of becoming whole. Tim and Millie may have found their way back to each other, but in the most horrifying way imaginable. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling movie stories. And remember, sometimes the scariest bond is the one you can never break. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.